Konnichiwa and Yokoso, live from the land of the rising sun that you will see absolutely none of today, here from Suzuka, Japan. Welcome everybody in. It's a wet and wild affair for round number 2, and I think we should start the day by recapping what happened at the start of Season 7, the GT Sprint Challenge here at RCI. But before we do that, hello everybody, I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Ted Edwards on the cameras today. Tim Peck, welcome in. I hope you are wearing some nice raincoat stuff today, because it's going to be a wet one.
I've got to say, Jesse, I think that's my favorite intro you've ever done. Yes.
Didn't know I could speak Japanese, did you?
I had no idea. I wasn't ready for it at all, but I loved it, and I'm sure I'm going to love today's race. I was actually saying to Ted just before we got everything set up for the stream that although I don't like driving this track at all, I do love watching it. And I've got to say, Jesse, there is one thing that I'm very excited about, and that is because the man, the myth, and the legend himself is back. George Boothby is in the race today.
I don't know who George Boothby is, but George Digby is in the series. You know, we had a conversation 1 week ago. George busy elsewhere. We were wondering, they were signed up for this series, but they were not there for the mountain. What a race to miss. Going back to Mount Panorama, it was a brilliant race. Very few crashes. The one really big one, I think we could all agree, but beyond that, it was a fantastic race and a surprise winner at the end of that one, Tim.
You put me on the spot here because I feel like I should remember who the winner was.
It was Jade Hutchinson.
It was Hutchinson, yes, because so I can't even remember who was leading the whole time, but someone was leading the whole time.
Malinowski.
Malinowski, that is it too. I'm on ball here today, Jesse, but they were leading the whole race. They had an incident and Hutchinson won, but it was very exciting. There are some highlights that I do remember. Van der Velde went for a bit of a spin, managed to compose himself in the end and catch himself. Foch as well went for a little bit of a spin too and caught himself. There was a lot of spinning at the mountain last week. So I've got to say, going into a race that is now a track covered in rain, I expect we might see a bit more spinning, Jesse.
Well, you've certainly seen a lot of that, and speaking of the devil, George Digby having a huge issue there coming through the triangle, and that will do your lap time no good. One of the quickest cars in practice was George, but unfortunately couldn't really lay that really quick lap down without invalidating. That's something that comes into a big play here in the rain. It's easy to do regardless, but because of the way that ACC defines track limits in the wet, going a bit wide on the slippery asphalt can create a huge problem, and has done for a lot of drivers, George probably being the most prominent of them. Keep in mind, missing a round of this championship isn't the end of the world, Tim Peck, because every driver gets a drop round in this champ.
They do, and that can be used tactically as well, but most of the time it's used if a driver can't make one race and they use that as their drop round. But again, it can be used tactically. If you just have one really, really bad race, you don't get a lot of points in it, that one will be counted as your drop round. It's not just the one you don't show up for, it's the one where you score the least amount of points. So we'll see how it's used. I imagine Boothby used it. Well, I think we actually discussed it just that Boothby was busy last week, which is why they used it. And I'm looking at the list now, and I don't think Malinowski is here this week. So this will most likely end up as Malinowski's drop round. But either way, I would not be surprised, Jesse, if we saw a couple of people who we thought were out of the championship use the drop round to push themselves back into the top of the standings.
Yeah, keep in mind, Malinowski did get points last week. We will, of course, at the conclusion of qualifying, have the championship points for you, but he did score points because he did get the pole position, didn't finish the race, so got no points other than that. But if he isn't here this week, you're absolutely right. The drop round will be used this week because he will have scored 0 points effectively. George Boothby has already used his mulligan on the season, scoring 0 points. He has a huge target on his back this season, and he cannot afford to make a mistake through the subsequent 4 or so races left to go. A lot of drivers out on their out lap. Of course, a very short qualifying, and Christian Bach will pretty much ruin that lap. I'm not sure if going wide like that's an invalidation through turns 1 and 2, but regardless, it will be a unfortunate time for him. Everybody struggling just a little bit to get to terms with the track wetness. It's going to get a little bit worse here in about 10 minutes. Luckily, qualifying will be over by that time. The track condition is, of course, wet, 19 degrees C and only 1 degree cooler ambient. George Boothby has gone to provisional pole in the 800 Ferrari, a 2:11.347. Half a tenth off of that is this man, Jonas Savalainen, in the 100 AMG Mercedes. Foch was down to third, but look who it is! It's Jardier himself driving for the Jardier community team. Goes ahead and goes at the top of the board, a 2:11.130, 2/10 faster than George.
And that is huge because, as you can see, Jesse, the rain is about to get heavier as well. Of course, that does say in 10 minutes time. It's probably getting heavier already now, which means that each lap is going to get progressively slower. And the other thing I was going to mention is 10 minutes of qualifying, it's not a lot of time in the first place, Jesse. But when a lap is about 2 minutes and 10 seconds long, 2 minutes 11 in this case because it's raining, you really don't get a lot of chances to make those laps count. So the fact that it's raining, you're more likely to make a mistake that invalidates your lap. That is really going to affect your qualifying performance. You cannot afford to make mistakes here.
You really can. We sort of talked a little bit about the drop round earlier. If you had a really bad, there were a couple of drivers I think that would fit into that group that had a really bad race number one at Suzuka. They've got to be immaculate for the final 4 or so rounds of this championship. They can't afford another incident like that. So a day like today might be a day where you see some drivers playing it incredibly safe, and yet some who may be in a less advantageous car, for instance, you might see them have a really fun day here because not only is it raining, maybe Suzuka suits their car better, but Tim Peck, you've seen something, and somebody all the way at the top of the board now.
Well, Salvalainen and Simonara have both gone with the exact same time of a 2:10.972. You can see there's absolutely no distance between them at all. However, Salvalainen will be the one in provisional pole for now in that Mercedes. And Jesse Lee, Salvalainen last week, if I remember correctly, started at the back, at one point was towards the front, and then was progressively in every other position on the track as well. They had a lot of racing to handle on the mountain.
Yeah, Sadler also had a penalty at one point. Don't forget that. They got a little rough with another car. They served that penalty, and that still didn't keep them outside of the top 10. Just an excellent day from them fighting from the back. And by the way, as Jardier went to the top of the board, and now Hugo Merrells goes to the top, a 2:10.577 for the Ferrari driver. That number 13 has put them to the top of the board. But just to answer a question that we so often get when we have deadlock ties is, how does Savalainen get in front of Simonara? Well, it's quite simple. Savalainen made it to the line first. They ran that time first. Tie always goes to the car who did the time first, and that's how that's sorted out. Right now, it is good enough for third spot, but they were on row 1. Unfortunately, now back down to row 2. And a little bit of a ways off. That is a mammoth time from Hugo there.
That is a brilliant time, but I'm looking at George Boothby right now, as is the stream, and I've got to say, if Boothby holds this lap together, they are going to put themselves on pole position. A lot of people that know Boothby will know that they are used to doing those fast lap times. They just put out fast lap after fast lap, and Jesse, if they manage to hold this together, they're about 8.5 tenths up in their time, almost 9 tenths up now. That will be enough for not only pole, but to smack Hugo's score out of the park.
Well, you got to get to the line here. You can't have an invalidation at 130R riding the ragged edge line there. There's a lot of different cars in today's race that might not handle that curb so much. And was that too much of a cut on the entry to the triangle? We'll soon find out when we get to the line. Will this be a huge improvement that George Boothby needs, or will this be a misstep coming to get the line? And it will be a huge improvement, of 2:10.615, 38/100ths off of Hugo Merrill's time, bumps themselves up to the first row of the grid, and I thought that could have been an invalidation, but that nice acute angle into the triangle was just the trick. Samir Foch also in P3, qualifying over for them. They beat George Boothby to the line by just a little bit, and they're hanging on in third. Everybody else, Hugo and George Boothby, both have a lap left to give. All flying laps count, of course.
Boothby is going to be kicking themselves there, though, because they were an entire second up on their lap time until they went a little bit wide in that corner, had to let off slightly, and it just took out 3 tenths off their time, which means it wasn't enough to put themselves on top. But Van der Velde, currently on a flying lap themselves here, looking to hold it together. I believe, yeah, they're only in Sector 2 right now, so got a little bit of a way to go, but they were someone who was punching a lot towards the top in the last race, Jesse, and I think Van der Velde could perform again here today. Currently, they're 3 tenths up on their time. If they can hold this together, they might find themselves up into around 5th, maybe 4th position.
Could very well do. Tinko van der Velde was another driver we were highlighting week 1 because they were doing incredibly well driving through some of the top half of the field, and very early on was one of the cars making incredible moves to gain positions. Can they keep that up today for Williams Esports? They very well could do, and they're looking to pick up here some. Anything better than the current row would be better. This could be a couple of tenths or more up on their time. Could have dropped them inside the top 5. Will it be enough? No, it will not. Lost time coming to the line. A 2:11 dead will be where Van der Velde ends up, and that will end qualifying. Hugo Merrill's on pole over George Boothby or George Digby, depending on what company you're hanging out in. Samir Foss-Jardier will be on the second row of the grid. Savalainen and Simonara, then Van der Velde, Tardali, Thomas, and Valentin Berrier are your top 10. Morgan McCall just outside the top 10 there in the 540. I noticed Alessio Mellis in 12th. Martin Lawrence up to P14. Session in 13th. That was another car we were paying attention to in week 1. I could go on and on and on about the cars on the grid today. Billen inside the top 15. Harry Conway just outside of that. Had that huge crash in week 1 as well. Well, we talked a lot about week 1. Let's show you the championship points after round number 1 and show you how we've got here today. Starting off with the top 10, Jade Hutchinson didn't win the battle of qualifying, but won the war, 65 points to their name. Garrett Fisher in second place with 58. Tinko van der Velde with 53 points in third. Jardier had a great race in finished fourth, 48 points. Hugo Merrill's inside the top 5, 44 points. Vanko Dimitrov with 40 points. Martin Lawrence in 7th place, 37. Marco Ripper, he finished in 8th place in the 666. 34 points. Jonas Savalainen in the 100 did excellent work despite the penalties, despite the crashes, and is tied with Jason Dyer for a top 10 spot in 9th.
And here are your, middle 10. You've got Romain Thomas. They have 25 points. They're in 11th place. Billen is in 12th place. They've got 23 points, just 2 ahead of Jordan Daly, who finished in 13th. Christian Bock is in 14th place with 19 points. Sem Smeets in 15th, ahead of Habchenko in 16th. They're 2 points ahead. There's a lot of 2-point gaps here, Jesse. Bosselet in 17th. They're ahead of Session, who's in 18th. Edvardsen and Samir Foch will round out the top 20.
Outside the top 20, looking like this, Ashley Holland with 10 points, Justice with 8 points, Nicholas Keller on 7, Scheckerman with 6 points, Matthew Schroeder with 5, Malinowski, who did not get points for the race, but because they had the points for the qualifying pole position, they have 4 points, tied with Brochures in 27th place. 3 points for Martin Lindrup. Nobody else has championship points because they did not finish in a position that would give points. As always, in RCI, a 0 means that they are contesting the championship but don't have points. A dash means that they have retired from the championship. Tim Peck, a wet race here in Japan, and what do you expect to see today? A lot of Ferraris up front, some Mercedes lingering about as well. It's one of those tracks Mercedes tends to do well, but owned by Ferrari here early. Wet conditions, a ton of cars. I'm talking strategy. What's my strategy today, Coach?
I didn't really know what the play is here, to be honest. I mean, the Ferrari's looking very, very good since they've basically got a front row lockout all the way down towards the middle as well. The Mercedes, like you said, it always performs well here, but to be honest, with the rain, I think the Ferrari might have the upper hand honestly, here, Jesse. And in terms of strategy, well, it depends. You've seen some of the strategies that worked out last week was people pitted a little bit early, gave themselves some clean air to run in. Or you could try and go long, maybe push your tyres a bit to the limit in the first stint so that you can really blast out some good laps in the second stint. But in terms of strategy, Jesse, I don't know. I'm interested to see what they come up with here. I'm imagining there'll be a lot of different strategies that play out, but George Boothby in particular, I think, will be looking to clear the pole sitter very, very quickly because realistically, you just want that open air for the first stint.
Trends of the race are very simple to follow. Starting up front gives you an incredibly good shot at winning the race. And I know what you're all thinking at home. No duh, Jesse. Of course, that is true for every race. But here in particular, there's a misconception about Suzuka, and it's that it's a hard place to pass. That's absolutely incorrect. It's very hard to pass cleanly here, though. Usually, contact leading into an incident, and you'll see that pretty much every corner around this racetrack. You can try to make a pass. Most of the time, though, is very ill-advised, but you will see those passes attempt to be made. And that, of course, is the correct time to welcome in our lovely armada of stewards here with us on Fridays. And they will certainly get a workout today. They kind of had it, I wouldn't call it easy. They had a lot of work to do last week, Tim, but really, there weren't a ton of big incidents to deal with. I just get the fear with the weather today, it might be the opposite.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Obviously, last week we were at the mountain in Bathurst, and you'd expect there to be a lot of incidents. And both of us said before the race that we imagined the stewards would be very busy, and they weren't. So I'm wondering if it's going to be a similar situation today. Of course, it's raining at the moment. We're almost expecting there to be a couple of accidents, but who knows? Maybe the fact that it's raining, everyone's going to be that little bit more careful. And then, sorry, I'm just laughing because Ted Edwards has found Tom Bryant in the audience here. Here's Tom Bryant. Got his sunglasses on. Jesse, I remember a time when we were looking for you in the audience in the Thursday Championship as well, so that's a nice take back. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, it's raining here today, and I expect that might make people drive a little bit more conservatively at the beginning so that they don't end up in the wall, and who knows, we might just have a clean race.
I'll tell you what, they were very conservative at the mountain a week ago. Might they use the same strategy and tactic here today? I will say starting up front here is doubly important. One, because it is difficult to pass cleanly, and number two, the weather. In the mid-pack, it's going to be a fraught affair, at least for the first couple of laps until you sort it out. Don't be surprised when we go up the snake, or the S's as we call them here, into the Dunlop curve. Don't be surprised if they're still too wide and haven't sorted it out on the opening lap. Pit strategy will pretty much be the same. I don't suspect anybody will elect an extra 5 seconds to take tires. You have to be stationary in your pit stall for 25 seconds regardless of what you do. 30 seconds equals a tire stop, though. I don't think that'll factor into today's race with the weather as it is, but I have been wrong before. Tim, if you are starting in the middle of this pack, what's your strategy?
As I always say, Jesse, close my eyes and hope for the best. And to be honest, I think that's the best that a lot of these drivers could do today. I mean, it's always tough starting in the middle, especially when it's raining. But basically, I think you just got to really get your head down and keep pushing the car forward. You have to find those openings and try and climb as much as possible. Because the thing is, if you go too conservatively at the beginning, if you just try and keep the car safe, that can often lead to you falling back through the orders, and then you're going to find yourself at the back of the pack. And like you said, you can overtake here, but it's risky. So if you're starting in the middle, I think it's just a case of get your head down, be as alert as possible, and try and find the gaps as soon as they appear and just climb your car up. But realistically, I think a lot of it, Jesse, is going to come down to a little bit of give and take with each other and just making sure you all stay out of each other's way.
And finally, a welcome into all of you watching at home. We appreciate you spending a little bit of your Friday evening with us here at RCI TV. We definitely appreciate that. We hope you're well wherever you are in the world. And just once again, we thank you for being with us. We do have some lovely partners at the bottom of the screen. We'll hear more about them at the conclusion of today's race. Final moments of preparation, 130R. One more time. You get a good look at it here. It's a very sharp angle corner, very easy to get wrong. And today, the penalty is going to be even bigger by going wide today. Could be a lot of spins. We See a lot of spins here recently in the dry, let alone the wet. But nevertheless, 30-plus cars getting ready to do battle here at Suzuka. Round number 2 of Season 7 of the GT Sprint Challenge. Let's change it up here today, Tim. How about you take the call down into Turn 1?
Oh, I'm going to have to get ready. This track, Jesse, it always sort of trips me out. I'm sure it trips out a lot of the drivers here as well, because you've got this start-finish straight, but the start-finish line is a long way up it. You can see on the mini-map there, it's about halfway up the start-finish straight, so these cars just really crawl towards the start-finish line. But what I'm looking for here is Boothby to make a move around the outside, and then Honda to follow as well. That is a lot of cars. It's raining as well, so you can barely even see the ones at the back, and it is very nerve-wracking. But they're about to cross the line now, and then we will be going. Who is going to come out on top into Turn 1? Well, we're about to find out. It looks like Hugo got an amazing start there, but Boothby already in front of Hugo will be clear before the corner begins, pushing Hugo out to the side as well. And that is the number 800 through cleanly before they even get to Turn 1, Jesse.
George Boothby doing an excellent job converting that spot. We didn't really talk about that, but you can use the outside lane to get a really good run into turns 1 and 2, and that's exactly what happened really before they even got there. Hugo caught just a little bit napping there. The Team VMS Ferrari now being led by George Boothby's car, and we'll see as finally Jardier, by the way, in the background has got around Samir Foch. They ended up being 2x2 through the third turn, but they finally got that sorted. Jardier on top, Foch down to P4. Savalainen trying to fight off everybody else and also gain a spot himself on Samir Foch early in the race. Those two drivers very familiar with one another. Meanwhile, George Boothby setting sail almost literally.
It's very, very wet out there, but Jesse, there has not been an accident yet. As I say that, though, something has happened at the back to cause a slow driver, but nothing major, although there's a couple of yellow flags appearing back there now through the tunnel. But for the most part, for a wet race, Jesse, this isn't as bad as it could have been at the start, and every driver seems to be looking very feisty. There is Savalainen who goes for a drift out of the corner.
Well, Savo's not really happy about what happened there. He was racing Foch and Vandervelde. He's racing everybody here and got a little out of sorts there, and then also drove into the dirt there in 200R. You don't really want to do that. You can't afford to drift wide there. And you can certainly try and do it, but the unfortunate part about that is because of the way the angle of that turn, it just throws you into the dirt around the outside. We've seen several cars get into the wall. Saved it somehow, did Savalainen. Looking back now, that was Vandervelde, by the way, not Foch, that Savalainen was fighting. Two Ferraris, you will excuse my mistake, two very similarly colored Ferraris at that. But yeah, took exception to the way Vandervelde raced him there a little bit, tried to fight back, didn't get the better end of the stick, down to P6. Maybe a little bit of light damage to that car, but in this weather, probably no harm or foul. Look at Tardioli in the background, that that double 7, that 77 car. He's got a trade with Thomas and Martin Lawrence behind him, all fighting over that spot as they continue on the second lap. And might I say it, I think I can say this now, for the second week in a row, we have had a cracking start to a race, and it was not a huge kerfuffle as I expected. What a brilliant job. Several cars into the pit lane. This car quite heavily damaged, the Brian Scheckerman Porsche, and unfortunately the fan choice, the Christian Bach 114 GTR, has been crunched at both ends, it seems.
I think that may have been the yellow flags that I saw on the map earlier, but yeah, Jesse, like you said, a brilliant start. We also saw the two BMWs getting very feisty with each other through the S's. But one thing I'd like to point out, and I know I talk about him a lot, but George Boothby is already 1.7 seconds ahead of Hugo, and it's only been a lap.
That's George Boothby for you. We do have some replay. We'll see what happened here. That is the GTR, the unmistakable silhouette, even in the spray. Contact there, unsure exactly what happened. That sent the GTR offline, and they thought about going 3 wide there. Jordan Daly involved in the mid-pack as well. Normally when we get a replay, it's very clear what happened, but in the current weather conditions, that was anything but decisive on that one.
Oh, it looks like we're going to have another one here, Jesse, to see what happened. This is the Scheckerman, who also ended up in the pits at the end of the lap, and actually, there you go, Scheckerman going off track with a slight tap as well. But I think what we thought was a very clean start may not have been as clean as we thought, as it seems the mid-pack had a lot of incidents at the beginning.
Well, looks like one of the McCalls has had issues on the starting grid. They didn't even make it into the race, rather unfortunately. Hate to see that, but Rob, we do appreciate the report nonetheless. Blaming the ISP in his native South Africa. You hate to see that happen, but rather unfortunate nonetheless. We talked about the start being rather clean. I still say, for the vast majority of drivers involved, it was indeed very clean. A couple of unfortunate incidents, but nothing apocalyptic as expected thus far. And as we get into the race now, we look a little bit into the weather report. It is going to improve the weather ever so slightly, but it will probably matter very little to the drivers. It doesn't appear to be improving beyond a certain point. Still 2 rain lines under the cloud, and even though it says it is lightening up a little bit in 30 minutes, it, at this stage anyway, will be of little consequence.
I want to change the answer to my question that you asked me at the beginning, which was, what's the strategy here? I imagine that there are at least a couple of drivers here, Jesse, on the grid that took the strategy that maybe the weather will let up a bit, maybe even enough for dry tyres. Now, it's not guaranteed, but there could be a couple of people here who are on some very heavy fuel runs, just in case we make it to the end of this race and the weather has let up a lot. So I'm interested to see if there's anyone like this. We've got another replay here of Salvaline just getting tapped a little bit.
Savalainen and Vandervelde. Yeah, that's what I was referring to earlier about Savalainen taking exception to what Vandervelde did. Kind of tapped him on the exit there. Not sure who was actually at fault for that. It looked like Savalainen had to duck out of line to keep from hitting Samir Foch. And what actually happened was Savalainen was offline. Now, did Tinko take a little extra real estate there? You be the judge at home.
I'm not sure. I want to see the steward's opinion on that one. If there even is opinion to have, it looks like neither got into too much
will be.
trouble. But of course, Savalainen lost a position in that instance, didn't they? So I'm not sure whose side I'd necessarily take there, but it did. It looked sort of like 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. Savalainen trying to get out someone's way and Tinko not quite letting up, but in a situation where they probably wouldn't have had to if Savalainen wasn't already trying to get out of the way. So it's a hard call to make that one. And as I always say, Jesse, I'm glad I'm not the steward making that decision.
Yeah, I'm glad about the steward that has to make that decision, but I also, partner, am very interested in what they have to say on that particular incident. Oh, one car, I think. Did we just see one car way off, or was that a trick of the light there? Maybe a near fender bender here as well. That might have been a trick of the light or something. I thought I saw a car in the fog just completely go off the racetrack. I'm losing my marbles here. Never mind. Tinko holding on to the back of Tinko holding on to 5th place. Savalainen hanging on to the back of Vandervelde right now. It's got Valentin Berrier in tow right behind as well, the highest placing Audi at this time. And I think I must have been right about a car going off because they've all just moved up in position now, Tim.
Maybe you were. I was going to say I'm not 100% sure that is correct, although they have all just moved up a position. I'm trying to work out who has found themselves.
Foch is back in 7th.
Oh, we've got a replay. Now we know what happens. Here's Samir Foch going around turn 1, and what happens here? Oh, they've made contact. Is that Vandervelde they've made contact with, and they've gone off the track. Now, I'm not 100% sure you're exactly right, because if I remember correctly, Jesse, you said they went flying off, and that definitely was not flying.
Well, it was a trick. Oh, no! Michael Herman has had a big issue here going through the second Degner turn. Oh, they lost it before they even got there, look. They lost it in the first Degner.
Oh, that is so unfortunate. You can see they were accelerating out of the first one, and they just completely lost it. Had no grip at all, and they've spun again as well.
I've done that before.
As they try and recover, and that's going to put some damage on the front of the car too. So that is going to be very annoying for the 488 there. Bray going to have to return to the pits, I imagine, at the end of that lap. But they have managed to recover, Jesse, and they're not totally out of this race yet.
Absolutely not. These two have been going at it since the start of the race. That's not changed at all. The double 7, I keep trying to call it the 777. 777's a different car. That's Schroeder down in 21st place. Both BMWs. Yes, it is confusing. Yes, I am confused by the rain. It's one of those days. Romain Thomas, though, trying to get that spot from the 77 car, but has not been able to do it through the first 10 minutes of this race. And just an excellent job by Tardioli trying to keep them behind. Thomas, that is, and doing a good job of it so far.
Well, it's interesting to see their different lines as well. Of course, both drivers are in the BMW, but they're driving it very, very differently. You can actually see that I've forgotten who it was now, actually. That's very unprofessional of me, but I've forgotten who it was. But the car that was in 9th place, Jesse, is actually taking a much tighter line through the corners, almost like a triangle. Here we go, it's Thomas and Tardioli, but Thomas takes a much tighter corner, almost like a triangle shape, whereas Tardioli likes to swing it quite wide. And I found it interesting because they're both driving BMWs, but have two very different methods of driving the car.
No, you're absolutely right. That is exactly what's going on there. The Valkyrie Esports driver is not putting a foot wrong either. They can ill afford to do so. Simonara's behind them, Martin Lawrence right behind them as well, and it's basically a train back to P12, 13 position. So if they do step off, Romain makes a little bit of a mistake, like we saw Savalainen do earlier in the race, then they're not going to lose one position. They might lose several if that were the case. So they can't afford to make a mistake, and to their credit, they certainly haven't. But look in front, a really wide run through Spoon. Tardioli taking everything. Oh, he's going to go off the track here, look.
Yeah, this is what I mean, is like that there looked a bit more like less grip than anything, but Tardioli has taken really wide lines. I'm wondering if it is because they are struggling to keep control of the car here. We know it's wet weather, and we know in the wet weather as well that cars can get maybe a bit understeery, even a bit oversteery at times. It's very hard to keep that car where you want it, and I'm wondering if Tardioli is just struggling with these weather conditions, whereas Thomas has got them a bit more down. And you can see as well, Thomas keeping this gap as tight as ever. He's going to have a very good run here into the start-finish here, although I'm not sure it's going to be enough to overtake, but Tardioli there, again, going to the inside to defend himself in the first turn here. But Tardioli, I think, Jesse, might just be struggling with the weather conditions there.
Well, also, too, you talk about the car that is right behind them and has been following him the entire race, but I agree with you, partner. That looks like something amiss with the car, probably the tires or something leading to a lack of grip on that car, and putting them very much in the clutches of Thomas. Again, Thomas not willing to make a mistake here. It's going to have to be a clear-cut opportunity to make a pass before they stick their neck out. But Tardioli moving around like they had been doing on that previous lap through Spoon reminded me of something. Last week it wasn't a big deal. It's very hard to do so around Bathurst, but here in the wet conditions, it's very easy to get drive-through penalties for track limits. You only get 3 warnings, and on the 4th time asking, you get that dreaded drive-through. Not a short pit lane around here either, so could be very damaging to anybody in the race today, and also means you have to pay extra attention to where your track limits are in these sort of conditions.
Well, Ted actually just made a good point as well about how they were driving on the track, and it's that, actually Mercedes here, Dimitrov going for a move around the outside of Schroeder, I believe. Almost looked like Schroeder just sort of let it go quite easy there, not wanting to put too much of a defense on Dimitrov there. So Dimitrov going to pick up that position, put themselves up into 21st. But going back to what I was saying, Ted actually pointed out that tyres here going to be quite hot maybe if you've not calculated the temperatures right. Maybe these cars are going offline just to cool their tyres down, and maybe that's why we've seen them maybe swerving a bit. We know the car 77, I was saying they're taking a lot of wide exits and questionable paths here. Maybe it's to cool their tyres down, Jesse.
It's a good point. Maybe it is. Harry Conway, the prancing Force Flow team. That's so hard for me to say with that straight face. But Harry Conway finds themselves in an unenviable position. They've got Wouter Billen in front of them and Saristo behind them. And, well, it's one of those spots where Conway hasn't gained or lost from where they qualified, but unfortunately finding it difficult to go forward. But also, I'm a glass half full kind of guy, keeping the 97 and the like behind them, which is always a positive sign early into a race like this. A couple of moves up inside the top 10. I saw Martin Lawrence in P10. That's definitely a change of position at some point. We saw Samir Fosh basically gets sent a little bit into turn number 2. That's why they're back to P7 right now, and that has moved Jardier up to 3rd, putting their name in the hat for championship contenders. Your winner a week ago down in P14, that 726 Honda, not really cooperating here in the wet as we would expect, as they're having a little bit of a run of it. Martin Lawrence has just moved up into P9, I just saw, but here is your winner 1 week ago. Qualified incredibly well, front row. Didn't have anything for Malinowski, but it didn't matter. Ended up with the win regardless. A nice clean race and a nice clean pass there through the Degners, I might add.
Hutchinson's showing how they won that last race, just getting the pass done cleanly and again continuing to pursue on the track. And that's what I've taken from Hutchinson in particular, is that they're just one of those consistent drivers that continuously puts out those good laps. And that's exactly, Jesse, how they won last week. We were talking about this going into last week as well, is the choice of the Honda as a car. We've got a race replay here. This is Paulo Lima. Looks like they're very close to another car. Is there going to be contact? There is, and Lima being spun out here is now facing the wrong way. But going back to what I was saying, Jesse, is that Hutchinson picking the Honda. There's another Honda here as well on the track, I believe. But the Honda was a good choice for Bathurst because we know it performs really well there. But how is it going to perform across the rest of the races where it looks like the Honda starting to struggle, as Hutchinson finds himself in 13th and Billen finds himself in 16th, which is a big change up to where they were sitting in last week's race.
I am quite surprised. I expected Honda to do a little bit better at their home race, and I don't know if it's the weather or what, but outside the top 10, I don't know if I would have picked either Honda to win today, really, but I definitely would have said at least one or two of them in and around the top 10 as, well, it is a long race after all, 44 minutes left. We'll see. 30 minutes from now, though, it is going to be light rain as it is forecast in the top right-hand corner of the screen. The temperature has gone up, started at 19 degrees C. It's 20 degrees C on the track as well, and no wind to really speak of. So the track will start to dry out at some point. Will that mean for pit strategy, Tim? Will people try to stay out as long as humanly possible with their cars and try and see what the track's going to do? I think it might be an interesting strategy call.
It might be interesting, but I don't think it's worth it. Daly, they're recovering from an instant. We're going to find out exactly what happened. John Day sliding into the barrier there at tremendous speed, but will recover fairly quickly. Although that's going to put a bit of damage on the rear, Jesse, which might make that car a little bit harder to drive. You can already see that Daly here struggling a little bit, but as Ted just said, it could have been a lot worse. Daly there did manage to keep it mostly out of the wall for that matter, but oh, I've forgotten what I was saying before Daly had that incident there, Jesse, but I'm sure it wasn't too important.
We're talking about pit strategy with the drying track potentially. Yeah,
that is it. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think initially at the beginning of the race, it could be something crossing a few of the drivers' minds, maybe fuel up a little bit more and try and see what the weather looks like throughout the race. Now, though, looking at the weather forecast myself, I don't think it's going to be too much of an influence that we're going to have to change tyres here. I think it is going to be wet until the end of the race, and that, of course, means that a lot of the drivers that were hoping it would get a bit dry towards the end won't be getting that benefit, which means that some of these guys that maybe are lingering towards the back here have a lot of fuel on them and will be going significantly faster in the final laps. But Anthony Hutchinson in the chat said that 76 started third from last, now they're up to 14th. I told you to watch him. You are right. Hutchinson, the 76 in the Honda, won last race. You should be watching
They gained another position that lap, in fact.
They're up into 12th, and they started third from last. They've gained probably about 20 or so positions here, Jesse.
They certainly have, absolutely flying. I might still get my Honda inside the top 10, as I imagined we would. Hutchinson trying to make that a reality. Tinko Vandervelde, who had the quickest lap of the race, well, he has it no longer. Hugo Merrells has taken the fastest lap away, and that's really bad news for George Digby out front.
Gonna keep calling him Digby, and the poor guy probably doesn't even know that's the name we've christened him with yet, Jesse, but
he's going to be really confused at some point whenever we're calling him that, but that is an inside joke here. Tim Peck, that's a Tim Peck original joke.
Tim Peck,
I'm absolutely going to out, because it's absolutely funny. We were talking, you and I were doing the Thursday champ, and we were talking about the Friday champ and how George Boothby, this was several seasons ago, when George Boothby was dominating the Friday champ, Tim Peck couldn't remember Boothby's last name and said, his name's Digby, right? And ever since then, internally, he's been George Digby.
You know what? I stick by it. I think George Digby is a great name, and Digby, he's going to be sitting here watching this stream afterwards and go, is that why they keep calling me Digby? Because we've been doing this for a good 6 months, Jesse.
It's been a while, yeah.
I feel like the poor guy just doesn't know why, and now it's going to finally have clicked with them. George
Digby sounds like the name of a wealthy landowner.
It does!
A very regal individual. Sounds like a lovely person to have dinner with, doesn't it, George Digby?
George Digby does sound like a very, very British, very, very wealthy name. And I know that when I first said Digby, it just became this huge thing amongst all the RCI staff because they thought it was the most hilarious thing they'd ever heard. And one night, I distinctly remember, Jesse, was I came home one day, everyone was just randomly sitting in a staff chat, so I hopped in to see what it was about. And you were all looking up Digby, and we found Digby pubs, we'd found Digby history with different people named Digby, and well, we really dived deep into the Digby thing as Van der Velde has picked up a drive-through penalty. Is that for track limits, Jesse?
Well, we've had a couple of different things come through, and I'm going to start reading them. Grim Lilith handing us the slips of paper today. No further action between the 114 and the 197. A 5-second penalty for car 18 for forcing the 22 off track, position not returned. Racing incident between the 137 and the 726. No further action between the 966 and the 197. Racing incident between the 726 and the 31. Racing incident between the 65 and the 44. Racing incident between the 95 and the 18. Drive-through penalty for car 18 for moving into the 488, taking them both out that back on lap 3, turn 13. Racing incident between the 88 and the 66. Racing incident between the 777 and the 666. That might be a first in history that two cars that are triple numbered hit each other here at RCI. Drive-through penalty for car 66 for taking out car 88. Position not returned, and racing incident between the 726 and the 28.
Sorry, Jesse. Bosset has just done an amazing overtake. Found the inside of the number 22 there. The Audi running themselves a little bit wide in the corner, and that will help Bosset to come right through. We're going to get a replay of what happened. You can just see 22 shoots a little bit wide, doesn't have the grip to accelerate as fast, and Bosset sees that gap, charges straight through.
Yeah, Boslet's not going to let opportunities go by the wayside. He's going to try his utmost to get those spots whenever they can, and certainly has done on that occasion in the 137 Porsche. I can't imagine on a day like today that Porsche's handling too well around here, but they're all making it work, all the Porsche fans and drivers alike. Oh, it's going to be a wide entry. Martin Lawrence overcooked it trying to race the BMW, but I don't know if they've actually lost the spot. They certainly have not. Tardioli, I think that was they were racing against, just had to go wide there. Took the wiser of the two lines. He could have tried to turn in, and that could have been really nasty.
That was a very uncontrollable car for a second there, but Martin Lawrence manages to recover the car, gets back onto the track, and is now continuing with their pursuit, still in 8th, and as you can see, Jesse, already closed that gap right back up to Tardioli.
Yeah, Martin Lawrence has a fast hot rod right here today, the second best Audi in the field. Audi looks pretty good. Valentin Berrier up in P4 right now as well. Martin Lawrence trying to get a little further up. Christian Bach has got themselves a stop-and-go 10. Now, that has not shown up on the penalty report, and I can't imagine how they've gotten that penalty, that maybe speeding in pit lane or something along those lines, but that does not show up on the pit or the penalty report. The drive-through for Paulo Lima has, of course, and we told you about the Tinko penalty as well.
That is going to be very unfortunate for Bok, who has picked up that penalty supposedly for speeding in the pit lane there. Gosh, that's got to be really annoying. This is... You don't really want to be pitting here too much anyway. You don't want to pit on any track too much anyway, but that Bok has just pitted, done their pit stop for the race, is going to come back out and now has to go straight back into the pits again and serve a 10-second stop and go, and that's really going to affect their races. Hutchinson makes contact there with Mellis, and you can just see that Hutchinson's going to continue to slow down as Mellis makes contact with someone else behind.
Big crash right there. Was that Simonara that they had contact with? Ferraris and Audis go absolutely flying. Alessio Mellis here. Let's see what happens. Car going down the inside, and that's Hutchinson. A little bit of contact sends Mellis wide, and they spin out, and that is Simonara, I'm pretty sure. Unless I'm very much mistaken, that was massive contact there. A couple of cars very much and truly up. That was Lucas Cruiser, in fact, in the number 7, the Ren Welton Esports car. That was the car they had contact with, and they are deciding right now, after that, now is the correct time to come in and get service done. I am being told that stop go was from the steward, in fact, and I'm being redirected to the top of the thing. And oh yes, I did miss a penalty report. This is why I didn't know that stop and go. It's a long one, folks, so you will have to forgive me for missing it. It takes up several lines. Stop and go penalty. Stop and go 10 for car 114 for losing control, making unavoidable contact with the 44, not holding brakes, causing additional avoidable contact with the 75, the 911, and the 180, taking out car 180. So incident involving the 114, the 44, the 75, and the 911. Stop and go 10 for car 114. Additionally, a warning for car 71 for avoidable contact with the 18, and a warning. This is an additional warning on lap 4 for car 71 for causing another avoidable contact with car 18, spinning themselves out, resulting in a second warning. And of course, the way RCI stewarding works, you get one warning, and on the second warning, it is converted to a 5-second penalty.
Jesse Lee, there was an amazing overtake there. Saristo went shooting around the outside of Billen behind in the Honda. So Saristo's put themselves up into 13th place. Now, of course, Shanti in the chat points out as well that pit lane speeding would have been the stop and go for 30 seconds, not 10 seconds. So, well done, Shanti. That is a very good point. And as you just heard from Jesse, we did actually miss that one out. But there's a good battle going on here for 13th place, Jesse. I mean, it's sort of split up a bit from 13th, but if you look from 14th downwards, that's a good train of, I'd say, 5 or 6 cars having a battle for the 14th position.
It really is. And Tardoli, by the way, has decided now is the right time to pit, and now has Jade Hutchinson done the same thing. This will fulfill the requirements of the required pit stop. Remember, no matter what you do in pit lane, you must be stationary in your box for 25 seconds. Most weeks we talk about, is a tire stop advantageous, adding an additional 5 seconds to that pit stop, making a 30-second stop. Today, I don't think that is a topic of conversation. I think everybody will do the minimum 25 seconds today, but I don't mind this at this stage. You've gained what you're going to gain if you have a racy car at the start of the race. Maybe get yourselves out in some clean air here and continue to make hay, I think, is the right thing to do. Alexander Hrabchenko, who put on a little bit of a show for us week 1, back at it again inside the top 20. He's got Schroeder right in front of him in the 777. And, of course, that appears to be Sim Smeets, who's in the 20th place position right behind them as well. And that lovely Turner Motorsports colored car, the Liqui Moly GT Challenge America liveried car.
These BMWs are attracted to each other, Jesse. We've got Session and Thomas fighting out for 9th. Thomas there must have made the overtake, because I believe they were the other way around last time we were looking at them, so Thomas climbed a position. But Schroeder and Hrabchenko now having a battle of their own for 18th. And if you look down the order as well, Tardioli, Richardson and Lima having their own little battle in the BMWs as well. Of course, Richardson and Lima have 5-second penalties to serve and still have to take their pit stop, so that battle won't last too long as well. But Tardioli taking their pit stop now, finds himself in 25th with quite a lot of people ahead of them. But is this the call, Jesse? Have an early pit stop, give yourself what seems to be a bit of clean air, and hopefully by the time that everyone else comes out of the pit, you're slightly ahead of them.
Yeah, it's one of those things you have to figure out when it's most advantageous for you, and sometimes it will be better for you or another car. And look at this, Vanko Dimitrov trying to go the long way around the outside, just about had it taken care of in the triangle, but a nice fight back from Wouter Billen, and that's brought Ripper back into this fight. The 666 is right there on the back bumper. Could there be a potential double overtake? Could Ripper get this done? I think that might be the case. Going the long way around the outside, that's not a bad way to try and make the pass, but no, Billen will hold strong in the wee shite Honda there. Ripper will have to try that again at some point. Certainly looks like he has speed in that car.
Yeah, he looks like he's putting a lot of pressure onto Billen right now, and I'm not sure if the outside overtake is the thing to do here. You can carry a lot of speed around the outside of these corners, but Ripper may have to look for another way to get through here. But I mean, he's got a lot of opportunities. There's 30 minutes left in this race, Jesse. A lot could happen.
Yeah, you can never rule out drive-through penalties for track limits. You can't rule out making mistakes by yourself or contact with overtake. We've seen a lot of racing incidents today. That was to be expected considering the course and the conditions all adding to it. I do like that we've seen more racing incidents and no further actions than anything else. The stewards doing what they always do, trying to let the racers race. And if there's no need to give a penalty that breaks up a fight, there won't be one. The only time really penalties are given is if contact leads to position change, or if there's a huge mistake that's outside the rules. Like, for instance, another big sticking point, of course, is not holding brakes in an accident. And speaking of which, Session very nearly had an accident all to themselves, slipping through Spoon. They get a 10 for drifting, but a 0 on the speed chart. You know, the inside of Spoon is a drift pad around here. Unfortunately, he was on the outside of Spoon, not a drift pad. That's a racetrack.
Well, they're going to hope that they've put enough distance on Conway here to not lose the position, but Conway actually pulling into the pits will allow Session to breathe life for another day in that 10th position. But that was a skid and a half of the 977. I'm sure that would have put them into very dangerous hands. I'm wondering here, if Conway had continued to persist that and not gone into the pits, would that have been enough acceleration on the straight, Jesse, to overtake them? As we're just going to cut back to George Boothby here. Started the race in second, did a brilliant turn one overtake to get up into that first place, and now they have a good 3.9 second gap to Hugo behind in the number 13. So for Boothby, this has been a very just cut and chase race, really. They've got into that first position, Jesse, and they're just running it. It's straightforward. They've not had to do too much here. And if you're Boothby right now, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that 4 seconds does not make me very comfortable at this stage. Jardier's had the quickest lap. Merrill's has had the quickest lap. Boothby now has the quickest lap of the race. They're all trading it back and forth inside the top 5. And right now, for my money, Boothby is the quickest car, but it isn't by much per lap. 4 seconds in 30 minutes or thereabout is not comforting, especially considering this car, the VMS car, that's a bright orange car. That catches your eye in the rear view camera or mirror. You can see that car, and as a driver, my mentality is, I hate that. I hate that I can only gap him by a half a tenth a lap, knowing that if I slide a little bit wide, if my tires get a little bit too hot, then it's going to be a problem. But Merrill's is going to come in and has picked right now as the time to do their required pit stop of the race. That'll bring Jardier in as well. And we'll see, as George Boothby did not come in. Valentin Berrier also in the pit lane. Foch, Tardioli, and Conway we saw come in the previous lap. And it wouldn't surprise me if you saw the vast majority of cars come in on the very next lap in a response to this. Nobody wants to be left out by themselves.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is Boothby's chance here to probably pit the next lap. Of course, Hugo sort of forced their hand there slightly. They've come into the pit to choose Boothby. If they want to avoid any sort of overcut or undercut, they need to pit now, really, just to be safe and nothing happens in the pit lanes. It's interesting because Altuve put in the chat, George spinning at the start of qualifying was just to assert dominance, and you know what? I think you're probably right. Dr. Glock just says, I'm Boothby right now. I'm thinking, who the beep is Digby? Yes.
Do you know?
You're probably
do you know,
wondering who the beep is, Digby, because I don't even know what to call him anymore. Jesse, are we going with Boofy or Digby here?
I mean, well, he's both to me, and I will say the first thing I do when I go to the club is I walk out to the middle of the dance floor and I just lay down in the middle of the floor. That's how I assert my dominance in a public space. But, you know, to each is their own. By the way, Tim and Liz, you may not know, Dr. Glock, that's actually Boothby's dad. He has joined us, and that makes him Dr. Digby.
Dr. Digby! Oh, I love that. That is, you know what? If you want to keep Boofy, I think you should change it to Digby, because Dr. Digby, that is a brilliant name. Does that mean that the Digby on track right now is Digby Jr., Jesse? Because, oh my god, Digby Jr. leading this race right now, that is a statement and a half to say.
You know what I would love? I would love, obviously, George Boothby, a very well-known streamer over on Twitch, UCOG, and I would love it if his audience would start referring to him as Digby as well. That'd be so very funny. But additional penalty reports coming in, and rather afraid that it's one of them has gone against our winner of race 1 around the mountain. 15-second penalty to car 726 for taking out car 15, position returned. So that keeps a drive-through penalty off the board and only gives them a 15-second penalty. Stop and go for car 15. Following the contact with the 726, the number 15 does not hold brakes, applies full throttle, veering into the path of car number 7, who has no chance to avoid. Stewards have increased this penalty to a stop and go 10 due to the failure to hold brakes, poor use of throttle, full application, and a poor rejoin. So all of that leading to a stop and go 10.
Got excited there. Sarista was lurking behind Session there. They both went towards the inside, maybe to cool their tyres, maybe just for track position. You can see now Saristo all over the rear of the BMW, but they swung to the inside and then back to the outside before turn 1. You can see now doing exactly the same through the S's, just trying to find any position possible where they can try and push through. And you can see as well, Digby out of the pits, has Smeets in between them and Honzik, but where's Hugo gone? Because Honzik's jumped the position. They're now in provisional second.
Well, you have to keep in mind, it wasn't a huge gap to begin with between the two of them, so the fight was very much on. It's possible they just had a better in or out lap, or dare I say it, a quicker pit stop. Maybe something going on there that we didn't see. A difference in the pit lane times. We'll try to keep you up to date on that, but a few more penalty reports just to keep you up to date. Between the 44 and the 183 racing incident, and also a 5-second penalty for the 666 for failing to avoid a collision, causing a collision with the causing a collision with the 183. Position was not returned. So that's an interesting 5-second penalty. A car that could have avoided a contact did not and got themselves a penalty. You don't see that very often, but just sort of unsafe driving there, as it would turn out.
Just looking at Hugo right now, apparently their pit stop was 5 seconds slower than Jardier's, so I'm wondering if they maybe took new tyres, or perhaps they just had a much slower pit stop. We will find out here, but Hugo just 1.2 seconds behind. They're definitely not much slower out on track here, and I'm wondering if it's going to come down to a battle between the number 30 and number 39 here, because you can see Hugo is closing that gap already, and actually no, it's just got a little bit bigger as I said that, but thinking back to beforehand as well, Hugo, they weren't far off Digby themselves, so it's going to be interesting to find out how this one turns out. Stop laughing at me every time I say Digby! Confused!
Tim Peck, I laughed at you nearly 6 months ago when you said it for the first time, and I'm going to tell you something, son, it's never not funny. Savalainen has taken the fastest lap the prior lap and then has decided it was the correct time to serve their mandatory pit stop. That has brought Romain Thomas, Session, and Saristo all into the pit lane. Martin Lawrence has assumed the lead with Sim Smeets in second place. George Boothby, or Digby, if you prefer, out in P3, the first of the cars to have pitted. Jardier in fourth place, which is technically second place. Hugo in third or fifth, depending on how you look at it. And That's interesting. 5 seconds, that's the exact amount of time that it would take to change tires. Did Hugo feel that it was advantageous to do so? Is he expecting it, I wonder, Tim, to dry out a little bit and maybe do excess damage to those cars that don't take tires? Meanwhile, he has a fresher set. He'll be less susceptible to that. I think that might be what's going on in the number 13 camp.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they did sort of have that feeling behind them, put on the new fresh set of tyres so they have a slight advantage here. Sorry, I was just laughing at what Dr. Glock said in the chat. They said, when I was 6, there's a movie called Digby, the biggest dog in the world. George will be happy to be a big dog. And you know what? George is a big dog, has dominated this race so far.
He
has a 4-5-second lead on Jardier behind in the number 39. And I've got to say, whenever Boothby is on track, they make it look easy, and that has absolutely stayed the case today.
Well, we talked about having to do something to get yourself into this championship and not making mistakes. Of course, Boothby not with us for round 1, right? Oh, big slide here from Savalainen. Oh, still not got it under control. Might run a little bit wide into the sand. Samir Foch might get the spot back here, as that's going to be an incredibly slow run up to 130R. And yes, indeed, position change. Samir Foch taking advantage from an unstable Savalainen and getting a spot back. Savalainen will be absolutely frustrated with his exit or entry, even, as where that started into Spoon. But George Boothby might have taken tires on that. Tim, do you have more?
On Savalainen or on Boothby? Sorry.
George Boothby. Savalainen is into the pit lane. This is an unscheduled stop. Something amiss on the 100 car. And that will all but take them out of contention for a top 10 spot here today. Sim Smeets has surrendered the lead of the race, and so has Martin Lawrence as well. But I heard a little rumor that George Boothby might have taken tires as well. Do you have any more on that?
Taking tires is a new fresh set of wets. I mean, maybe they have taken a new fresh set of tires as well here, Jesse, but I don't know. I'm wondering if that is the strategy. If it is, and if that is the case of what happened, then they're still 4 seconds ahead of Honzik. Was Honzik that close? How far? Do we know how far back Honzik was before the pits? Because I'm wondering.
Jardier was only about 4 or 5 seconds behind. They were all running within around 5 seconds of each other. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Then that makes sense, because that means that Boothby did take the extra set of tyres. That puts them 4 seconds ahead of Jardier. Hugo took the fresh set of tyres as well. That's why they find themselves in third position now. And do they know something we don't? But is that the call here? Honestly, I'm thinking if it's just going to get wetter, you could stick it out on those wets anyway. But I think that's going to be the thing, isn't it? Coming into the final few minutes of the race, we're going to see how much that tyre difference makes. But right now, if we're basing it off Hugo's performance, not to dishearten them at all, but they've not closed that gap to Honzik just yet. So clearly the change in tyres has not done its part just yet. But then again, in 10 minutes time, Jesse, maybe Hugo will just be pounding out some brilliant laps here and will have overtaken Honzik. But what it says to me, Jesse, is that Boothby is just covering themselves from Hugo. They knew they could take that extra 5 seconds in the pits. They know that they are fine just to come out on the safer set of tyres.
I have just been told something by RCI's chief steward, Tom Bryant, that I did not expect to hear. Apparently, he believes, now he's in the stewarding box with the stewards, obviously, as a chief steward would be. He's down there, and he reckons that every single car has taken tires at some point in the race. You disagree with that. I think that most of the top 5 did take tires, and I think it's all because they're afraid that the track is going to, it's not going to dry up. I'm not saying it's going to become dry. It is going to become drier and more torturous to the tires, and they didn't want to be out there on used wet tires that are continuing to gain pressure and heat here late in the running. So I think defensively, a lot of the teams, if not all of the teams, have taken tires here as a defensive move, not an offensive one, as the track temp continues to build we know with about 8 or 9 minutes left in this race, it's going to dwindle down to light rain till the finish of the race. There's already a line on the racetrack you can see that is drier. It's not a dry line, it's just a drier line. My goodness, action-packed here, and it's all going to come down to it. But I still think that makes what you said, Tim Peck, completely true. I think everyone anticipated something here at the end of this race, and you're going to see a couple of teams going forward, and probably a couple going backwards as well.
Maybe, but it's not 100% the case. We were discussing it in the chat just now. It's that Honzik and Barrier definitely did not put fresh tyres on their cars. Their pit stops were 5 seconds clean of everyone else's. They both did 104 pit stops, so everyone else's were 109s. There's not a chance that they took a fresh set of tyres, and actually Hugo's caught up with Honzik here as well, so I'm wondering if this is Jardier's tyres are just not performing as well as the number 13 Ferraris here. But I'd say a good 90% of the lobby here, Jesse, have taken a fresh set of tyres, and maybe they were anticipating something to happen towards the end of the race. Maybe they just thought, hey, 5 seconds difference, I can make that up on the track alone. And maybe as well, it was just a defensive thing, especially for these front runners, because Hugo, okay, fine, they were in the range that Honzik could overtake them, put themselves up into that second place. But if this is the tyres now helping them to catch up and put the pressure onto Honzik now, maybe it was the right call to have the fresh set of tyres on. There's a big battle going on down here. Session trying to hold off Cerezo, going round the outside of the first turn. Just about on it to give those Cerezo, but not able to make the overtake happen.
Cerezo, that was an incredibly ballsy and bold move, a wide move by Session. It's going to be side-by-side contact. Saraceno's going to go off the track, and Session's going to get to keep that position for the time being, and that's going to bring Vanko Dimitrov and Hutchinson back into it, and that's going to demote Cerezo all the way down a little bit. No, he's going to fight back. Look, he's going to get a couple of those spots back. Incredible drive, incredible grip by Oscar right there to get all of those spots back. I didn't expect that to happen. Extra grip in that car, perhaps. But going back to what you were saying, Tim, you're absolutely right. Jardier, I think, is on the opposite strategy of everybody else. And I also agree, Merrill's speed, he was nearly at one point 2 seconds behind Jardier, and now he's caught all the way back up. Could those new tires be paying dividends and might have Jardier not taking tires and being in between Merrill's and Boothby? Might that have just won George Boothby this race by virtue of the car behind him holding up a faster car, maybe? But all things considered, you're going to have a lot of new players in this championship. Jardier is going to get a boatload of points today. Hugo's going to do that. Obviously, George Boothby is going to get a bunch of points as well. Jardier, though, might leave here with the championship lead.
That would be brilliant for Jardier, but I'm just thinking as well, as Samir Foch said, makes a slight tap. Is that car number 18, I believe I just saw there, but Samir Foch has a slight tap with car number 12, I think that actually was instead. No, it was someone else completely different. Maybe car number 22 who's just come into the pits. I'm ever so confused about who that was. It was car number 22 that Foch just had a tap with. But going back to what we were saying here, you say that this is great for Boothby. Obviously, they've got a slower car that is holding up their main competitor, well, what was their main competitor in this race. But Jardier right now, they're still in second, Jesse, and there's only 12 minutes left. If they could defend this, then them not opting to take that fresh set of tyres, saving themselves 5 seconds in the pit that put them ahead of Merrill's, that's enough to secure them second, and that would be a great strategy call from Jardier. But that being said, 12 minutes, anything can happen in 12 minutes. Can the number 39 McLaren hold out that long on what will be a considerably worse set of tyres?
I think it is. And also, I don't mean to be rude to Jardier. They're not technically holding up Hugo Merrill's right now. They're not quite in that range, though they might be just about now. Jardier did a strategy call, and it might work out to promote him one other spot. They're in absolutely no threat here to fall off the podium regardless, and Jardier trying to make a run at this championship. 2 strong rounds right out of the gate. Keep in mind they finished 4th a week ago. They're poised for a podium here, regardless what step of the podium it is. They're likely going to be your championship leader leaving today, and it's a brilliant drive. And also now, Jardier, maybe they don't have tires, but it doesn't matter. They are in the best position, and that's leading here at Suzuka, a place notoriously difficult to pull off a clean pass. If Merrill's is going to try and do this, they need to do it decisively, and they need to do it quickly. No hanging about, no getting side by side. All that's going to do is invite contact and controversy. And Jardier, the wily veteran, he knows that just as good as the rest of us. 2x2 through 130R. Could they possibly get it done? Yes, he can. Oscar down to the inside, hanging hard. Session around the outside, pulling up to passes Vonko Dimitrov. They go through the triangle. They get side by side, but they all sort it out on the exit. Brilliant driving here in the mid-pack.
That was some very pardon me, nail-biting racing.
Good.
I would try that again. That's a very nail-biting racing from the 4 in the mid-pack there. These guys have been absolutely battering it out from the get-go. It's been brilliant season. It looks like Dimitrov here going to make another move for the inside of Cerezo, but Cerezo does have enough momentum to carry themselves around the corner ahead, but Dimitrov absolutely not giving up here. We talked about how the Mercedes does favour this track slightly, and Dimitrov is really pushing this car to the limit to try and make something happen. Not able to do so yet. Cerezo is going to continue just pull away from there. But going back to what you were saying about Jardier here and just trying to hold off, actually, Jesse, you've forgotten the key thing about this championship. They will not be leading the championship coming out of this round. They will have 2 good performances that could very well help them to be the one leading later on. But there's a drop round, which means whoever wins this race, likely to be George Boothby, will actually be in lead of the championship, because no one else is going to have beaten them at this point. They will have the lead of the championship overall, and the drop round will come into play, and it will calculate who's in the lead so far. But that being said, if George Boothby comes into next race, ends up in a bad position, maybe drops down to 10th or something, Jardier is looking very, very good, because they've had 2 very high-performing finishes, whereas Boothby, they've absolutely used their drop round already.
You've done me there, Tim. I wasn't expecting you to use. I wasn't expecting you to use math against me there, but what I mean to say is obviously Tim Peck is very much correct, but in a straight fight, it's 2 good results for Jardier. But Tim's absolutely right. Jardier will not technically be leading this championship because there is a drop round, and the drop round automatically is assigned to your worst finish. And, well, if Jardier finishes second and Boothby wins the race, that's effectively them finishing 1-2. Round number 1 for both drivers are forgotten. So right you are. A couple of things to note late in this race. Drive-through penalty on lap 18 for car 137. Throttles up, taking out the 777, position not returned. Racing incident between the 88 and the 22, and a racing incident between the 97 and the 977. That on lap 21. All other drive-throughs that you've seen have been for track limits. I have been told that Savalainen has been given a drive-through for track limits, and I saw a couple other cars do the very same earlier in the race, but still a lot less drive-throughs than I expected to see. About 10 minutes left to go in the race, and that can only mean one thing. Tim did this last week, and I thought this was absolutely brilliant, and we decided privately we're going to continue to do this, I think, throughout the series, Tim, I believe, is what we arrived on. We want to hear who your driver of the day is in chat, and most votes win. How many people that vote for the same driver? Obviously, that's how you win that.
Oh!
Bach won last week. Oh, it's a spin!
No. Dimitrov just hit the rear of Session, then Session has just spun out. We're going to get race replays to see exactly what happened, but you can see Dimitrov lurking very close behind. And as they come towards the hairpin here, just a little bit late on the brakes, and slightly clips the rear of the BMW. That leaves the BMW struggling behind the pack. And I believe Dimitrov there slowed down to give the position back as well. So whilst that's good sportsmanship there, it's going to hold up the two drivers massively as it's taking that BMW a while to recover, but that's all going to help Suristo because they're going to find themselves up into 11th place, which is where they've been trying to get to for a while there. Yep. But that's going to cost Dimitrov a lot because you can see they are trying to let that BMW back pass. They're definitely going slower here, Jesse, to let the BMW catch up. But I don't know, that's going to hold up Dimitrov. And if they don't let that BMW back pass, it might be a bit too late now. That's going to be a penalty, surely.
It very much could be. One of the problem spots of the racetrack is that little hairpin right there. But Suristo will be saying, well, thank you very much. That's not entirely what they had in mind or how they envisioned that pass coming off, but it certainly has done just that. What I was saying earlier was vote for your driver of the day in chat. Most votes for the same driver will win them driver of the day. It doesn't pay points or anything, but it is something that Tim started last week, and we agreed. We want to know who your driver of the day was. It was the GTR last week. It was Bach that won the fan vote. They had a fantastic race, all things considered, driving through the field. Today, though, I'm afraid it very much will be somebody else. And quite curious who you guys think it is. Was told that Martin Lawrence, the man we call Race Car Jesus, took the quickest lap of the race, and in fact still has it in the 171. Two Audis, 4th and 5th, and looking very good as Martin Lawrence taking the bonus points away from George Boothby. That will help Jardier in the championship fight.
Martin Lawrence as well is currently driver of the day. If we look at the votes in the chat, we've had 2 for Martin Lawrence in the 171 Audi there, and just taking the fastest lap, that's also going to help their case for the driver of the day. But this is Hugo Merles. They're in Team VMS in the Ferrari. They've caught up with Jardier, although they were about this close, probably about 4 or so laps ago as well, Jesse. So, you know what? Jardier might just be able to hold on to this. They've managed to hold on to second so far. They're on a slower set of tyres, whereas Merles has a fresh, much nicer feeling set. But it looks like the number 39 just has enough to keep in front. And I've got to say, with 4 minutes to go, this is looking more and more possible for Jardier to hold on to second place here with some brilliant strategy calling of not switching out the tyres that helped them to get into that second position.
He's doing such a good job, and I wondered if just position would be enough, and it looks like it has been at this stage. By the way, no further action between the, I believe it was the 75 and the 114, that down in turns 1 and 2. We showed you that live earlier. And we expect to get some more reports coming in. Now, what we can say is as Vardson has got themselves a drive-through, and I'll just check just to make sure that is not for a penalty by the stewards, and it is. And 5-second penalty for the 966, though, causing an unavoidable contact with the 777. Don't know what the field has against the 777 today, but certainly has been on the receiving end of a lot of punts as it would turn out. And I have also been told that the 100 car of Jonas Savolainen has got themselves an additional drive-through penalty, that again for track limits a second time, and they have pulled their car into the pit lane. They have decided enough is enough. A few minutes till the finish line. Now that might still that would give them points if they finished in the points, because they finished more than 80% of the race, but I don't think it will because there's so many cars running. Interesting to see that George Boothby's own father is now taking to calling him Digby in chat. That's going to be mission accomplished from us today. Please, Glock, do not do that in the household later. That would be very embarrassing on all accounts.
No, do it.
Can you imagine? No, don't do it. Don't listen to Tim. Don't do that. You're like, Digby, dinner's ready. Don't do that. Don't do that. Nobody deserves that. Oh, my goodness. We have fun here at RCI. Have you noticed at home yet? Final few minutes of the race. A couple of battles still yet to be decided. This being one of them, of course, the battle for second place.
And I've got to say, Jesse, Jardier has managed to keep themselves ahead of Hugo, and has now given himself a bit of a gap as well. Now, okay, fine, that might have been that Morales had a little bit of an accident, or maybe not an accident, but like, you know, maybe went a bit wide on the corner, hit a curb a bit too hard. But either way, Jardier here in the last 2 minutes of the race is still in second place. We've got 2 laps remaining because Boothby will make it to the line before the cut-off point, but they won't have enough time for a final lap, which means it's highly likely here, and I don't want to do a commentator's curse and jinx it, but Jardier might just be able to hold off onto this race for second. I'm looking at chat right now as Dr. Glock says going to be calling his new daughter Minnie Digby. You know what? I love that. And although Jesse's going to get very angry at me here, that is a brilliant name. Minnie
I absolutely
Digby.
hate that.
It's an honor.
Don't do that to the baby. I almost called it the baby Digby. Don't do that to the baby Boothby. Don't do that. Warning for car 44. It's infectious, folks. Warning for car 44 for an excessive dive bomb. 5-second penalty because it is the second warning for car 44. Racing incident between the 977 and the 44. Drive-through penalty for car 44, though, for taking out car 977. Position not returned. We theorized that would be the case, and it has done. Racing incident between the 100 and the 911. A racing incident between the 180 and the 66. A drive-through for car 100 for taking out car 911. Position not returned. Car 100 has retired from the session. A time penalty will be given.
Hang on, Jesse. There's a race replay here. There's a 180 car making contact with the number 66. Are they going to collide? No, they're not. It's just the 180 fighting the 66 on the corner, getting maybe a little bit too close and scraping up against each other. But Jesse, you may continue.
Well, I was done with the penalties, but I will say that Franco Dimitrov was in line for a very decent day today, but unfortunately that drive-through penalty, that will be converted into a time penalty as well. They're not required to serve it if there's less than 3 laps to go, and I think they'll get to the line before they elapse those 3 laps, so that'll be converted into a very hefty time penalty, and that will drop them straight out of the top 25 at least. Very little points on offer there for today. Saristo, though, what a race it's been for them. Some incredible moves late into this race. Jardier up to P2. George Boothby getting the jump on Hugo Merrils. And if you are Hugo Merrils, you have to be thinking to yourself, what could I have possibly done different today? Tim Peck, I want your final thoughts on the tire changes that Boothby and Merrils did. Obviously, it hasn't hurt Boothby at all, but if you could turn back time and do it again, would you tell Hugo not to take those tires? Never mind. Tim Peck is rather indisposed. Tim, are you back?
I am back. I do apologize, Jesse. I was having some issues with the mic, but I am back now. I believe you were asking me for my final thoughts just before I left of the race. Am I correct?
Well, I was going to ask you, I'll ask you after the race about Hugo Merrils. In fact, as we are coming to the line, what can you say about George Boothby? Missed round number 1, had a prior engagement that kept him out of the race. We expected to see him this week, but did we expect to see him winning round number 2 and putting his name all the way at the top of the championship board? I don't know, but he's done it. George Boothby wins round number 2 from Suzuka. The Digby's done it.
Got to call him by his full name, Jesse, and that is Digby, the biggest dog in the world. Digby has had a brilliant race today, started second, got into first place on the first corner, and just took it from there. What a brilliant performance from George Boothby. Jardier as well secures that second place after an amazing strategic call from them, and Hugo Merrils will come in third place with what could have been a second place for them as well, but just unable to make those new tyres work. Jesse Lee, what an amazing race we've seen here today at Suzuka.
Absolutely brilliant. A couple of incidents, I think we could all agree, a little argy-bargy, but that is the way that it goes around Suzuka more often than not, considering the tricky conditions. Another brilliant race. 2 on the trot for us here on Friday, the GT Sprint Challenge here on RCI TV. And man, they have absolutely lived up to the hype. Cars still cycling through, and the top 10 are all home without penalty. But beyond that, the penalties start to stack up. A disappointing day for Hutchinson, and it looked so very sweet at the start. But unfortunately, with penalties and incidents alike, they will lose quite a number of spots. Tinko, you could add Vandervelde to that list as well. And this is the car that nobody liked. Matthew Schroeder, the Valkyrie Esports car, they had a couple of big accidents. Apparently, none of their making, though. today they'll be wondering what might have been, but still 21st place. The battered BMW comes to the line. Everybody finishing up. Now, Tim, I'm going to ask you again what I asked you earlier. Hugo Merrells took those tires and might have lost P2 because of it. If you could go back, would you tell Hugo to not take those tires?
No, absolutely not. I mean, if I was Hugo's best friend and I needed him to win or something, then yes, maybe. But I like the racing aspect, and honestly, I think one of the most exciting parts of this race was Jardier's choice to not take the tires. That put them up into that second place position. Hugo took the risk. They thought to themselves, okay, I can take this tire set. Yes, I'll be slightly behind if they don't take the tires, but I'll easily be able to overtake them. And it just didn't work out for them. But that's the thing with these different strategies is at the end of the day, it's all a gamble. So maybe if I needed Hugo to win for a particular reason or to be a lot more feisty, I'd have told them not to take the tires because that in turn would have helped them to stay fighty with Boothby. But realistically, from a strategic point of view, at the end of the day, Jardier's choice to not take those tyres is something that not a lot of drivers did. Barrier did it as well, and they ended up securing fourth because of it. I think it's just, at the end of the day, it's one of those calls where the people that made that call got a good victory. Well, not a victory overall, but a good victory for themselves that they deserved there. And Jardier today making that choice to not take the new fresh set of tyres, to stay out just ahead of Hugo, that's what secured them that second place, and that is a brilliant strategic call from them.
Here are the results of the race. George Boothby continued to run really quick laps. In fact, the very last lap of the race re-secured him the fastest lap of the race. That's what the magenta number means. And while the 800 winning the day, George Boothby doing it. And Vince in chat said that call him Wigby because he's a winner. And I'm going to give him that. And Jardier, what a brilliant strategy call, or lack thereof, a strategy call there at the end that secured them second place. The man that always races better than he qualifies, and that means something considering how well he normally qualifies to boot. Second place, Hugo Merrell's third rounds out your podium spots. Barrier and Martin Lawrence rounds out your top five. Foch, Thomas, Simonara, Tardioli, and Harry Conway your top 10. Harry back inside the top 10 on Friday for the first time since I don't know when. Outside the top 10, Saristo, who put on some excellent moves late. Marco Ripper, Billen, Smeets, Hutchinson, your top 15. Session, Dyer, Rabchenko, Cruiser, and Vandervelde, your top 20. Tim Peck, final thoughts on the day.
I couldn't have seen that race coming, honestly. I'm not a huge fan of Suzuka. Watching it, I don't mind, but driving it, I absolutely hate. But I thought that was a very exciting race. Boothby, of course, had an amazing start that helped them to secure the win, and then there were some brilliant drives all around as well. And I've done the calculations, Jesse, from the chat. Car number 171, Martin Lawrence, Jesus himself, is the driver of the day for the chat. So a brilliant well done there to Martin Lawrence, as they had a good drive, ended up fifth overall, and it was a brilliant performance.
Well, let's talk to our winner of the race, George Boothby. George, don't talk to your dad for a few days, and whatever he tells you is a complete lie. We weren't saying anything. Don't listen to him. I mean, do you even know that guy? Don't trust him. George Boothby, congratulations on a brilliant win today. You made an incredibly daring outside move into turn one, cleared him before you got there, didn't really look back, just had a really clean race today, it looked like, from our perspective.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I did qualify, and I just couldn't get the lap for some reason. In practice, it was going great, but yeah, in quali, I just, quali happened, I guess. But then, in the race, I just thought, right, it's going to be very hard to overtake around this track, especially if you're behind someone with all the water and the spray. So I thought, you know what, let's just try and see if we can hang it around the outside at the start. So I really tried to nail the start procedure minigame, and I've been practicing a little bit lately. And it worked, it worked. And I was able to, clear him before turn one. I basically perfected the start. I'm quite lucky. I did risk it because obviously sometimes if you push it too far, you can get a drive through. So I guess I was, rolling the dice a little bit, but hey, it paid off. And I was able to stay ahead I was able to pull a bit of a gap. It kept going back and forwards a little bit in the middle, but I think when I really pushed hard and nailed the lap, I was able to just keep pulling away. So, and then this decision in the middle was whether to change tires or not. And thankfully, I think my gap was just enough, so I thought even if I change tires, I should hopefully come out in front. So we changed tires, and yeah, it went well. It was a little bit stressful from my end, but I don't know what it was like from your end. But I enjoyed it.
It was an absolutely brilliant race. I've got another question to ask you, George. All race long, Hugo sat just inside your rear view mirror, that very bright orange Ferrari. Were you focused on that at all? I mean, the gap was building, but it was building incredibly slowly. Was that something you were constantly being mindful of off of every corner, looking back for that orange Ferrari behind you?
Yeah, like I say, because I pulled the gap initially in the heavy rain. So I guess my setup probably was just more suited for that. And then as soon as it started drying up a little bit, then yeah, he did start to close a bit, and then I pulled away a bit, and he closed a bit. And it's every time you go through the hairpin on this track, that's where if you look in your mirror, you can judge like how close are they. And yeah, he started creeping back a bit, and the sweat was dripping down my forehead a little, but I was able to just keep, because I got the gap at the start, I was able to just, as long as he didn't get within maybe like a second, I was able to just manage it a bit. So, but yeah, he was rapid, really quick. If I hadn't got him up the start, like, it would have been a very close race.
George, you don't know this. Tim Peck is actually a really big fan of yours, and I'm going to let him loose on you. Tim Peck, take it away.
Oh, you answered my main question, which was about the pit stops. I was very interested to know what was going through your head as you approached that pit window, because of course you had no idea what anyone else was doing, and actually it's what helped Jardier come second in that race was the fact that they didn't put on that extra set of tyres. So how big of a decision was it for you to just make sure that you obviously chose to take the new set of tyres, and how big was that decision for you? Like, how did that play through your head as you approached the pit stop?
How I thought of it was, if I've got to, basically if you take tyres, you lose 5 seconds. So I thought if I've got a 5-second gap, no matter what, if I take tyres, I come out ahead. So I think it was about a 4.5-second gap when Hugo pitted, because he pitted a lap before me. So I just thought, I'm going to take it. I'm just going to see how the stop is. Like, if I pull into the pit lane really well, then we are going to take the tyres. And I pulled him really nice, and I thought, yep, we're doing it. Hugo took them as well, thankfully. But yeah, Jardier pulling a blinder, not taking them, and yeah, he managed to hold him off. I feel like maybe overall throughout the race, he could have been quicker if he did, potentially, but obviously track position's everything. So when he managed to jump Hugo, like, that was great strategy from him, and he held off. So yeah, I think he was probably sweating more than me that race, and yeah, he did a great job.
It was a brilliant drive from both of you, and well done on that overtake on the first corner. You absolutely nailed that start. I only have one final question. It's because the stewards are egging me on to say and ask about it. Are you aware that you are now being called George Digby because of me?
I was told this, and I don't know where it's come from, but I mean, yeah, okay. No, I am Digby.
You are Digby. I've even got your dad saying it now. He referred to you at one point as Digby, the biggest dog in the world, because you're now a big dog, and apparently your daughter is soon to be called Mini Digby too. So I do apologise for that in advance, but it was all done out of pure love, and it's a name that will stick with us at RCI now. You are Digby, the biggest dog in the world.
I'll take that. Thank you.
and today, George is the top dog on the racetrack as well. George, congratulations on everything. The baby Boothby, right? New sim racing setup. A lot of things for you coming in. Congratulations on that. All that. Congratulations on winning today as well. Is there anybody you want to thank?
To the team, because the team, Veloce and Yasid, they're just amazing. And it's like all the people watching, it's like I wouldn't have all this cool stuff and wouldn't have this job as a streamer if it wasn't for all the viewers and stuff. So yeah, it's cool. It's nice to have a community like that. So, and then you guys as well. Oh, thank everyone, because we wouldn't be racing if it wasn't for RCI, right? So, thank you guys.
Absolutely our pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have time, go check out George Boothby on Twitch. He's UCOG over there. Lovely guy. I've spent many an afternoon watching him go last to first in public lobbies and everything. Quite funny. Lovely streamer as well. George, congratulations again. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner of round number 2, George Digby.
Thank you so much, guys. Digby out.
I love that guy so much. Knows how to do an interview. Loves to talk to us. Tells us the truth too. A lot of drivers will come in and they'll go, "Oh, well, I don't know." But no, George has always been a straight shooter. He's told us, "Well, yeah, I was a bit concerned, and I'm so happy that this happened," and it kind of gives you an excellent perspective on the race. There you have it. A huge different shot in the championship. It's going to be all knotted up at the top. We'll be back with you in 1 week's time. Round number 3 from Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, which means I'm going to have to learn how to say hello and welcome in Belgian, something I don't know how to do, Tim. But we will be right there. Hey, you don't have to wait till next season to get involved here at RCI TV. No, you do not. You can be on the racetrack next week. Mid-season signups for all of our championships, including this one on Friday and our ongoing Thursday championship as well. Don't forget that we're also starting up the Deutschland Masters Championship on Monday. That starts on the 29th of August. Still time to do your pre-queue of that. And if you want to join any championship already in progress, all you have to do is sign up on the website racerci.com and do your pre-qualifying before that week's race. RACE-RCI.com. And of course, a big thank you to all of our partners that make this race and every race possible, aka Informatica, for providing our server solutions. Driver61, go to driver61.com, use our discount code, 25% off driver coaching over at driver61.com. Driver coaching can and will make you a better sim racing driver. Several of our admins here at RCI have used it and can personally confirm it has worked out indeed. And a big thank you to Fanatec. Feel free to use our affiliate link when making purchases of sim racing hardware at fanatec.com. Doesn't cost you a thing. It tells them that we sent you, and it helps us with things like server cost when you use it. Thank you in advance, and thanks to Fanatec. Tim Peck, big day today. Not a ton of crashes on the start of the race. Very mixed conditions. This championship is really shaping up to be something special.
Oh, absolutely. This championship can still go any direction whatsoever. Of course, Boothby will be leading it after today, but that being said, there's still a lot to play for. Malnowski is still going to be back in this championship next week. Samir Foch is still a factor. You've got Jardier as well. And I'm sure there are many other drivers that will be putting out the best drives just to be a part of this championship. So I'm very excited to see how this one turns out. And if we're going to Belgium next week, that is set to be a very, very interesting race.
It certainly will be. And my apologies, I forgot the Night Out Championship that's ongoing as well. You can sign up mid-season for that as well. Not broadcasted the Midsummer Championship, but it is ongoing. Next race tomorrow. Still time to do pre-queue, I'm pretty sure, if you want to get into this week's race as well. For us here in the broadcast booth, we will be back with you at Spa in 1 week's time. And on behalf of everybody here at RCI TV, myself, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Ted Edwards. On behalf of the stewards, the admins, and everybody here that makes every race possible, we thank you for joining us today. We hope you had a good time. And until next week, have a good night.